Hello and welcome to this week's video. My name is Anuska Taylor. Thank you so much for joining me. So on today's video, I am talking all about your hands and what do I do with my hands when I speak? Now, I have done a video before on gestures, which I will link at the end of this video. But here I'm talking about something I don't think I've explicitly talked about before, which is this very, very powerful link between your hands and your voice. And great performers know this. And in fact, I was inspired to do this video after watching Ray perform at the Grammys last week. She moves her hands a lot. So I'm going to get into this in this video because there is a powerful neurological, physical, and evolutionary link and connection between your hands and your voice. So before I get going, if you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button. And if you enjoy my videos, please do like, comment, and share. And if you're interested in working with me, all the links are below. I've got a couple of online courses. You can book a one-off casual session if you want to see what's going on with your voice, or if you want to really invest in yourself and have a much more powerful, deep, personal transformation. Then I've got my 8-month private voice coaching program, Speak with Impact, but all the links are below. So let's talk about this because when I first learned about this, I thought it was absolutely fascinating. And I'll start with watching Ray at the Grammys last week because I'm a big fan of her music. For those of you that don't know, I mean, my videos are primarily aimed at speakers, but I'm a singer myself. I also teach singing, but my focus has been more around working with speakers in the last few years, mainly because I realized there wasn't a lot of real content out there from a sort of technical, functional, emotional perspective on helping people really understand their speaking voice. So when I was watching Ray, she moves her hands a lot when she sings. And actually, go and watch the video of her performing Oscar-winning Tears at the Grammys, and you'll see what I mean. There's a lot of hand movement. And actually, I've got my microphone here just to demonstrate. Even when she was holding her mic, she was moving her fingers. Now, it could just be coincidence, but I very much doubt it. She's a trained singer. I know one of the coaches that she's worked with. I don't know whether she still does, but she's trained. She's incredibly talented, but she's also a trained singer. So my guess is that she probably is doing this deliberately. But there's also an element when we sing and when we get lost in the moment that we do move. I mean, it's just very natural. I move too. I think she's learned and really seen the power that she can get in her voice when her hands are soft, when her hands are moving. So let's talk about what this connection is then. Because you might be like, well, what would my hands have to do with my voice? So it's actually a connection between your hands and your tongue versus the larynx, versus the voice box. But if you know anything about the voice, and even if you don't, I've got a video on the tongue, which I will put at the end as well. Your tongue is inextricably linked to your voice. So it's actually connected sort of indirectly via the hyoid bone. So essentially what that means is whatever your tongue is doing is going to impact your voice. So if your tongue is tense, it's going to create tension in your voice. And when you are trained, when you understand this, you know the importance of doing work to release your tongue, to get more movement, agility, and freedom in your tongue, because your tongue is also essential for articulating vowels and consonants. So we need a dynamic, agile, sort of free moving tongue versus for a lot of people, if they don't do this work and they don't understand it, the tongue retracts, it pulls back into the throat. Then you end up with a very limited sound. You're not going to get freedom, power, effortless projection, clarity in your voice if your tongue is not agile and dynamic. And it doesn't matter what your accent is, doesn't matter what language you speak, we need the tongue to be moving in a very intentional way to get the most from our voice. So that's just to put it in perspective. So when we talk about the hand connection to the voice, it's actually really the hand-tongue connection. But because the voice and the tongue are so inextricably linked, it's essentially like we're talking about the same thing. So that's the first thing. So as I say, when you're a very trained singer, when you've done training, when you've done coaching with your voice, you learn how important your tongue is, not only in terms of articulation, but also really about finding more freedom and power in your voice. So let's talk about, first of all, the physical connections, because this first one, when I learned it, I thought this was absolutely fascinating. So in the fetus, there is a direct physical connection between the hands and the tongue, and they are actually joined. And it's only later that they bud off from each other. So the hands and the tongue are both very, very sensitive. There's a lot of sensory receptors on both the hands and the tongue. Both are highly dexterous, both are capable of a wide range of movements. Now, we know this obviously with hands, that's kind of obvious, we can see it. But even with the tongue, if you really start to bring awareness to what your tongue is doing when you become more intentional with articulation, it's really the tongue placement in these slightly different places within our mouth that creates the different vowels. And it's really quite incredible. And you're not really consciously doing it. The tongue is just got this ability to shape itself into these different vowel sounds. So now let's talk about the neurological connection, because this is also incredibly fascinating. When they've done functional brain imagery, it shows an overlapping of activity when we perform tasks with our hands and our tongue. This is predominantly in the premotor cortex, or the F5 region. So they've literally seen this on scans. And secondly, what they call motor overflow. So because the brain regions controlling hand and tongue movement are close together, if there's an overflow of activity, it will often spill from one to the other. So for example, if you're doing a task that requires a high concentration and fine motor skills, you might notice that you end up sticking your tongue out. Now, you're not going to be going like, but you might find that your tongue sort of sticks out a little bit. And this happens. Now, we might not know that this happens, but just start to pay attention next time, because that isn't a coincidence. That's because of this motor overflow. And then finally, the evolutionary connection. And this is probably the one that's most of interest to me. Well, they're all of interest to me, but this is really about language and the development of language, because actually early communication relied on hand gestures and pointing. And then it moved to hand gestures and noises and grunts and sounds before we moved into language. And then, of course, now it's very, very common for people to use their hands when they speak to aid the understanding of what they're saying. And again, I will post the video below around gestures specifically. And so, to pardon the pun, they go hand in hand. We speak and we use our hands. It's very, very common. Now, in some cultures, it's even more common. There's lots and lots of hand movement. But I think for all of us, if you were to sit on your hands and speak and try and speak fluently and powerfully, you would find it quite difficult. So even if you're not a big hand mover when you speak, there will be some element of hand movement because it is aiding the voice. And as I said, from the evolutionary perspective, this was very much part of aiding our language development and being understood. So why does this matter? Well, I've already sort of alluded to it, because I've said that whatever is kind of going on with the hands is going to impact the tongue, and then the tongue has this direct connection to the voice. Meaning, if your hands are tense, your tongue will be tense, your voice will be tense. So we want to try and keep the hands as soft and fluid as possible when we speak. And this is why, this is my own personal opinion, whether she was doing it consciously or not, I don't know. But that's why I think great singers particularly, there's a lot of softness in their hands. So even when they are holding a mic, they're not gripping the mic for dear life. They're just softly holding it. Or like in the case of Ray, she was still moving her hands even when she was holding the mic. So definitely watch that video, because it's really fascinating how much hand movement was going on when she sings. So it really does aid the voice. And she has this effortlessly powerful, big voice. And I definitely think part of that is because she's trained, but she also has a lot of softness and fluidity through her hands, through her arms. She's not gripping through her hands. She's not gripping through her arms. And that's one big part of this. When we grip through our hands, not only is it impacting the voice because of the tongue connection, but it's also impacting the voice indirectly, because there's nerves that run from the hands up the arms to the shoulders into the neck. And of course, the larynx sits in the neck. So there's all of these connections. And so what we want to do is keep the hands soft and relaxed and free as possible. The challenge for people is when we get nervous, we tend to grip and tense our hands. If we are presenting and we are maybe holding our phone or some kind of device, or we're holding a pen or we're holding a mouse, the chances are we'll probably grip. And it's really just about bringing awareness to it. Also, if you spend a lot of time typing, if you're on a device like typing, writing emails, writing text, the chances are your hands are going to get tense and tired. And we don't really give our hands, in all honesty, a lot of TLC. Most of the time, we don't really massage our hands. So they tend to just hold a lot of tension. Now, just releasing your hands is not going to transform your voice. You still need to train the voice because the tongue has a profound impact on the voice, but it's a really, really good start. And if all you do before you start speaking is really shake your hands, shake your arms, roll your shoulders, turn your head, get some movement through your neck. I get my clients, this is in like day one of working with me. I'm not just doing it for the fun of it. There is a reason why we want as much softness and movement through the hands, through the arms, through the shoulders, through the neck as possible. So in terms of the neck, then we can turn the head from side to side. The only thing we want to avoid is squashing the larynx. So anything like looking down or poking the chin up, but turning the head, not that you're going to be going like crazy when you're speaking, but keeping some softness through the neck, keeping some softness through the hands, the arms, the shoulders. So really make sure before you're speaking, particularly if you are feeling anxious, you're feeling nervous, try and get as much softness, movement, shake out the energy, shake out the tension, the stress, the nerves, get that movement. And then when you are presenting, just try and be as mindful as possible about not gripping, tensing, or grasping when you are speaking. Now, I actually have a handout, a voice prep guide, which is a free downloadable handout. There's a link in the description box below. And actually, the first section of that is preparing the body. And often people gloss over that because they think, no, I just want to work on the voice. But your body and your voice are connected. So you have to address this if you want the most free, open, powerful, effortless version of your voice. Now, yes, as a singer, there are far greater demands, but still as a speaker, this is going to impact your voice. So let me know how you go in the comments. So perhaps read something and don't do any warm up. Don't get things moving. Don't get the hands moving, the arms moving. Get some movement through the shoulders and the neck. The other thing you can do as well is stretch the tongue. One of my favorite stretches for clients is to pretend that you're cleaning your teeth with your tongue. So really stretch the tongue. You can also push the back of your tongue out. So you want the tip of the tongue resting against the bottom inside of your teeth, and then you push the back of the tongue out. And hopefully you'll feel a really good stretch. So if you do some of those warm-ups and those tongue stretches before you start speaking, I guarantee your voice will feel and sound better. As I said, this isn't a quick tip to avoid voice training because you still need to understand how your voice works, how to get it moving, how to get it out in the most powerful way. And also, a big part of my work is the psychology behind your voice. So again, if there's any internal conflicts, if there's any fear of expression, which there is for pretty much all of us, that is going to impact your voice until you bring it to consciousness. But in terms of this video today, just try out reading something. And first of all, don't do any warm-ups, don't get any movement or softness through your hands, your arms, your body, and your tongue. And then shake things out, get things moving, stretch things, and then read it again. And let me know how you go, because I guarantee it's going to feel better, it's going to sound clearer, and it's going to sound more open. So thank you so much. I hope this has been useful for you. Check out the video of Ray singing, because then you'll see what I mean. And I'll see you next week on next week's video.